The other point I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if everyone here saw the new video of the killing of Che Taylor released in the media last week. I'm not exactly clear why that video wasn't released earlier, but having said that, as we know, Che Taylor was shot and killed by the Seattle Police Department a year ago, leading to protests in Seattle, and it became a catalyst for the launching of the Not This Time Coalition, which is a grassroots coalition, which as its first move is attempting to move a statewide ballot initiative to make it possible to prosecute police officers who commit murder. Unfortunately, this council has played very little to no role in holding the police department accountable for this incident. I just wanted to remind the council, almost a year ago on February 26th, I sent an email to Councilmember Gonzalez requesting her committee hold a hearing on this. And in this email, I'm just going to quote my own email, just a part of it, where I said, I'm writing to request a briefing on the shooting where council members and the community can have a public dialogue with you, Chief O'Toole, and the Seattle Police Department. I assume that the Gender Equity, Safe Communities, and New Americans Committee will be the most appropriate place to have that discussion, as you are responsible for overseeing the SPD. It's really unfortunate that this committee has not held any agenda item on this point, on the killing of Che Taylor, and urging city officials to take an active participation in the investigation and keep the police department accountable to the regular working people. And I now think that in light of the newest disturbing video, the council should hold some sort of public discussion with the community and the SPD. And as I had requested earlier, I would prefer also again that when we do hold this meeting, we have representatives from the NAACP and from the Not This Time Coalition at the committee. And if the committee does not have time or inclination to hold this hearing, then I will be happy to hold this hearing either in my committee or as a separate session. Also, I wanted to mention to my colleagues that I've asked central staff to find out whether there are in written protocols of the SPD that once officers, if a suspect has been shot and injured and the officers have backup on the scene, do the protocols obligate officers to find aid for the shot suspect? I'm not sure what the protocols say. So we've asked central staff to investigate it, and they've sent that question along to the Seattle Police Department, and I'm sure we'll have an answer today, and I'm going to be happy to share that with everybody.
Can you, I didn't hear does the protocols require what again? Can you repeat that?
That if a suspect is shot in an interaction with the police, and if the police have backup on the scene, do they have an obligation to get aid for the suspect who's been shot? Okay. It's not clear.
Thank you.
This is a question that as soon as the video was released, a lot of community members sent that question to me, and I think it's a very good question. And then last but not least, I wanted to share with everybody, as you all know, there's going to be massive protests, very likely the largest ever protests in U.S. presidential history for Inauguration Weekend. We have massive protests happening on the 20th and the 21st all around the country, including Seattle. My office, which is bottom lining the Coalition to Resist Trump, we will be working with many other activist organizations to have protests on the 20th, and also we are in solidarity with the women's rights protest on the 21st. But this Saturday this week, on the 14th, the Coalition to Resist Trump will be holding a town hall to help mobilize for the protests on the 20th. So please join us. We're also working with the National Lawyers Guild to find out if we can have workshops at this town hall on the 14th to advise immigrants and young immigrants in terms of their rights when they go out and protest. We've heard that a lot of people want to know what their rights are, and I think that would be really useful. And the National Lawyers Guild attorneys have very kindly obliged to help us hold those workshops. So more information on that will be forthcoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Council President Harold, may I just respond really quickly to a couple of things that Councilmember Sawant mentioned in terms of a meeting in my committee with regard to Mr. Taylor's death. And I did, in fact, have a meeting related to issues surrounding Mr. Taylor's death. It may have not been structured in the way that Ms. Councilmember Sawant would have liked, which might explain why she didn't attend the meeting, but we did have a meeting where Andre Taylor and his family joined us and made remarks at the top of the meeting. And we had a conversation about what the next steps would be and what that would look like. And indeed, currently, right now, the inquest at King County is occurring, and that is being managed by the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And the Che Taylor family is being represented by James Bible, who's the former president of the NAACP. I have kept apprised of how that is progressing and have been told repeatedly that while that inquest is ongoing, it would be unreasonable and imprudent to have a public conversation about the actual evidence related to that particular piece of litigation. So I just wanted to clarify the record on that particular piece. With respect to the video that was just released in the media last week, I also found that video incredibly disturbing as a former civil rights attorney that represented victims in police misconduct cases. It's my understanding that there were at least 7 minutes that passed by before any aid was provided to Mr. Taylor once he had been shot. The standard that Councilmember Sawant is inquiring Central staff to look into is pretty clear from my perspective in constitutional law that officers are required to provide aid as soon as the scene is secure and that they're able to safely provide aid to a person who has been subjected to any type of use of force that results in visible injury. And I find it incredibly disturbing that it seems as though that might not have been done, and we'll follow up with the Seattle Police Department to inquire as to why that wasn't done and whether there were any findings by the Office of Professional Accountability or any intended investigation by the Office of Professional Accountability as it relates to the failure, from my perspective, to provide aid to Mr. Taylor that could have altered the outcome for him in this case. And it is absolutely just unconscionable to wait, in my mind, that long before providing aid.
Thank you. Councilmember Sawant, did you want to?
Very quickly, I think it will be really important for the council to have a meeting with community representatives. And as I said, it's especially important for representatives from the NAACP and the Not This Time Activist Coalition to be there because they're the ones who've been working on the ground. And without them, the Che Taylor case would not have remained in everybody's sights. And I also think that the council should should not take this statement at face value that the SPD should limit what they say until the internal investigation has been completed, because as a matter of fact, Che Taylor was indicted in the media before any investigation results were released. So I think that in terms of just setting a good precedence for everybody's rights being protected, I think we have to take into account the actual fact that Che Taylor was painted as a criminal even though he was murdered by the police even before any investigation results were released. So I think in light of that, it is absolutely appropriate for the council to hold a very open public discussion where members of the public are invited in a very active manner.
Okay, thanks for those comments. And I at the risk of opening up more discussion, which I don't want to do, nor will I did attend at least one very positive meeting, I thought, at SVI with Councilmember Gonzalez's staff and all of the family members where I think, and it was very well attended, where we openly talked about how unfair the media was during this and had this is right after the shooting, and talked about how unfairly Mr. Taylor and his family members were being portrayed. And at that point, we knew and anticipated lawsuits would start flying as they should have been, given these circumstances. And so we hope that, again, we not only the family seeks and receives some justice, but we, once again, use this as a tool to improve our policy. So more to be discussed and more to be continued. So thank you for those points. Councilmember Johnson, you're up. See if you could weave some zoning issues into this now. So.